Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
Question to ask the audience: are your sales flat or unpredictable? And you're not sure why? And that's what Darren will dig into on this episode. He'll talk about how to uncover what's really blocking growth, build the right sales process, and create a structure that drives consistent, predictable revenue. Our guest today is Darren Legault. He's a veteran sales leader with more than 25 years of experience guiding teams across Canada in industries ranging from physical security to distribution and manufacturing. Today, he works with business owners, founders, and CEOs of small to medium sized businesses who are facing flat or declining sales. Aaron digs into the real reasons growth has stalled, then builds the sales structure and strategy needed to turn results around. He started his career knocking on doors on straight commission and even gave up boxing so he wouldn't show up to client meetings with black eyes, swapping the ring for the golf course instead. Smart move. Darren, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. And, what's your favorite quote or saying?
Thank you, Bernie, and thank you, Wayne, for having me. It's great to be here. Mm, I learned early on it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's the way I kind of guide myself, and I've coached a lot of people on the sales side. And when people get a little bit negative or discouraged, it's something that I always say: it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And what's your tagline for your business?
With sales acceleration, it's fractional sales leadership, full time results.
Very good. So you started your career knocking on doors, 100% commission, and obviously that's a tour de force. What were you selling?
Yeah, I started my career selling security systems door to door, 100% commission. Uh, Much to the surprise of my dad after university, he says, you went to university, got a college degree, and now you're peddling things door to door. He wasn't that impressed, but it was a tremendous training ground. I learned a ton, getting doors slammed in your face, rejection, working out in minus 40 to plus 40 degree weather, uncomfortable situations, and you just learn grit and perseverance. I didn't have much success at first, to be honest, and I was ready to quit on a number of occasions. But I had my manager come out with me, and he provided some tips, a little bit of coaching, and then slowly but surely, I started booking more appointments and getting more sales, and I actually just started loving it. And I know that sounds weird when you talk about door to door sales, but I believed in the product that I was selling. First and foremost, I think that's really important. And I was selling security systems, so I was providing a solution that can potentially save someone's life or property. And like I said, it was just a really good training ground for me to start my sales career. So it like I said, it provided a lot of lessons, and I learned a ton from it.
So was boxing happening at the same time too, or
Yes, yeah, I started boxing, oh geez, well over 30 years ago when I was a kid, and mainly for the training. I didn't do a heck of a lot of competition, but I did a lot of sparring, and as a result, you get the odd black eye and busted lip, and you just couldn't show up to customers' locations looking like that, right? So I decided to give it up. You got to be presentable. I didn't want to show up looking like I went a few rounds with Mike Tyson's.
You could have said this was what happened to the last guy who said no.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been a good way to respond to objections for sure. But and the thing with any sport, whether it's boxing, hockey, or anything else, it really shows you that in order to win, in order to succeed, you have to follow a process. You have to build a foundation, follow a process, and that's how I kind of got into my sales career by following that and following the program. That got to me where I am today.
What have you found from your coaching is one of the common reasons sales, small business hits a plateau?
Well, every business is different, and every business has different needs. But there are a few things that I see that are common. First and foremost, business owners, small to medium size, they typically wear all the hats, right? They're involved in every aspect of the business, and they're stretched thin. They don't have time for. they're very good at their product and service, and they made some sales along the way, and they think, okay, well, that's how you do it. And then they hit a plateau, right? And the reason why is because there's certain things that are missing. There's gaps that exist within their sales organization. So what I see very often is a sales team that does not get much in the way of guidance or support or coaching because the owner just doesn't have the time or desire or even the skills to do that, right? So they have a sales team that doesn't get much guidance or support. They develop bad habits. They're unfortunately missing quotas, and then that leads to a lot of turnover. And so that's one of the main reasons why businesses don't get a plateau. They don't have a sales playbook or a sales process, which you'll hear me a lot today talk about. I look at a sales playbook as a kind of a roadmap for the business and the sales organization. And if you don't have that, then what you have is you have a sales team going in all kinds of different directions. So if you have a team of 4 or 5, you have 4 different messages. You've got 4 or 5 different ways of handling a lead, how to talk to customers and prospects, and that's not really a good ingredient for success. So a lack of a playbook is another thing that I see quite often. And surprisingly, a lot of businesses still don't use technology like a CRM, which is very surprising. And if they do use a CRM, they're not using it efficiently or the way they should be. And that, not having one as an owner, you don't have visibility across your business and sales. You don't know what your pipeline looks like. Very difficult to forecast when not knowing, what's going on with pipeline and funnels. And your sales reps aren't as efficient when you don't have that technology. So those are the usual things that I see when I talk to businesses, and I see that they're in a position where their sales are stagnant.
Darren, I find people are all over the map in their knowledge of information and jargon. I certainly know what it is, but why don't you tell me what a CRM is?
A CRM is a customer relationship management platform. I refer to a CRM as your command center for your business. So, people may have heard of software like Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive. Those are probably the main ones that you've heard out there. And really, I look at it as a one-stop shop where you can have everything put into your CRM. So, if you're a sales rep, you can put your calendar. You've got your all your accounts, all your leads, emails, calendar, and then based on all that information, revenue, pipeline, funnels, and that sort of thing, you can put together dashboards and reports. So as a manager or an owner, you can go into the CRM and get a very, very quick snapshot of what is happening with the business in terms of sales, what the funnel looks like, how are we doing, what do our win rates look like, what are the average deal sizes. So some very good information with some key metrics that are very, very important. And like I mentioned before, you can use this information to forecast and make investments in the future. So very, very important that you use a CRM. And like I mentioned before, the data, if we take a look at it, it's about 50% of businesses still don't use a CRM.
So, sales, usually when someone says sales, you think of a retail store and you're walking in, there's a clerk coming up. Obviously, that's not the same thing as walking into a dealership, and it's not the same thing from going to, I need to buy 2,000 feet of lumber or 2,000 feet of steel. How do you service all those different elements, or do you just particularly work on B2B side of the fence?
Yeah, the vast majority of my customers are B2B. Typically, they're businesses who have been around for a little bit. They've built up a pretty successful business, but they've hit a plateau, and they're struggling to scale. So that's where most of my clients lie. I also work with early stage startups as well. I meet a lot of founders who need help, so I can help them. But the majority of my clients are B2B, typically over $4 million per year in annual revenue, up to about 50. And in terms of industry, I'm industry agnostic, so I work across all kinds of different industries. Even though most of my experience has been in physical security and distribution, I've got cybersecurity, e-learning, construction, SaaS. So it runs the gamut of different industries.
There's a term I hear a lot that I don't think is understood a lot. called onboarding. Can you
Hmm.
tell me what you think it is and if it when it fails or when it succeeds?
Onboarding is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I'm telling you, most businesses fail at this. So onboarding really means how introduce a new hire into your organization. And the unfortunate reality is most businesses look at onboarding as a few days of product training, get your computer going, get your logons, and then okay, go out and sell. And unfortunately, that doesn't set up your new hire for success. It's like a sink or swim type of environment. So for me, onboarding to me it starts before the person's first day. I call it pre-boarding. So a company should send out a welcome package to the new hire, at least a week prior. Welcome to the organization, providing them a company overview, get their technology set up, key contacts, maybe even set them up with a mentor, and then have a very well structured, at least 30-day onboarding program where the new hire knows exactly what they're doing each and every single day of the week. Because they're hesitant, they're nervous, there's some anxiety. So having a schedule and an agenda, knowing exactly what you're going to be doing, I think really helps the new hire, and it also helps all the different people within the company. The worst thing that can happen, and it's happened to me, is you show up on your first day and the person welcoming you doesn't even know you're supposed to be starting, right? Um, that's not the best way to handle that. So onboarding should be well structured, well planned. I totally understand that emergencies pop up, so you know you take into account those types of things. But onboarding should be well structured, planned, and it doesn't end. And it doesn't end after a week or 30 days. It's ongoing. You need to provide your new hire consistent coaching and guidance. And probably one of the most important things is setting expectations. Uh, Expectations should be communicated and extremely clear each and every day. And so if I have a new hire, I tell them this is what's expected of you this week. And then at the end of the week, we reconvene and we review and talk about any concerns or challenges that they have and make sure that we take care of it right away. So without a good onboarding program, you risk developing those poor habits that I mentioned, higher turnover, and that can lead to costly hiring mistakes.
So, what are three good traits or good characteristics, and what are three bad characteristics for a salesperson? So, three good things, three bad things, three things to do, three things not to do.
Are you talking about when they first start, Bernie?
Yeah, well, even if you're in you're a business and all of a sudden you've hit that plateau, right? And you might be doing maybe two, maybe three of the good things, but you're doing some bad things, play,
Or
right? Yeah, the habits, yeah. Whatever. Are there any
yeah.
that kind of stand out?
Well, in terms of good habits or good things that I've seen in my career, I think for sales reps, number one is just being naturally curious is something that's something that a lot of good sales reps have as a skill set, because they're the ones that are just not just going out and interviewing a prospect or a customer. They actually want to know exactly what's going on in the business. They're curious about industry insights, competition. They know their product inside and out. So being naturally curious is something that is extremely important. Someone who is good at developing relationships, and because most of your customers are going to be customers over a long term, right? You're not just going to be selling and then never seeing them again. So developing that relationship over time is key, because you want to not only sell them once, but you want to cross sell, upsell, and you want to make sure that you can get some referral business out of them as well. So having a really good relationship with somebody is key. And I think persistence, like I mentioned earlier when I first started, not giving up at the first few rejections or objections. Just being persistent, being able to follow up is something that is really really important. And in terms of what not to do, I think a lot of salespeople talk too much. So you need to listen, I always say listen, listen, and listen more. Stop talking. I've seen it too often where reps have done a really really good presentation and they just oversell and over speak, and it just doesn't work out very well. The more that you can get your customer to discuss and talk, then you're on the right track. That means you're engaging, you're asking really good follow up questions, and I think a rep superpower is probably being able to ask open ended questions. I make that mistake sometimes too. At the end of a conversation, I'll say, "So, do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns?" Ask an open ended question, right? I would love feedback on what we discussed. I would love feedback on this particular feature that we talked about. Who in your organization do you think can take advantage of this particular feature of our product? So, open ended questions. Yeah, listen. Don't talk too much. These are all things that the sales reps can do to make sure that they win more deals.
Darren, you've alluded to it, but you didn't actually state it. If that's an open end question, what's a close end question?
Close-end question, it will give you a yes or no answer. So like I said before, like, "Do you have any questions, Wayne?" Right? "No," or "Yeah," or right? And then you're kind of stuck there, right? So, like I mentioned before, that would be a rep superpower, someone who is naturally curious and someone who can ask open-ended questions and really get a good discussion with your prospect or customer.
You've been at this a while. Do you find men and women sell and process differently? And do you find you train differently based on not on gender, but on styles that genders tend to be influenced by?
I think, it really depends on the industry. Like, when I was in the physical security business, it was a male-dominated business. Not a lot of females were women, I should say, were involved, and whenever, I did have a women woman, salesperson, they did very well. They did very well. They have a very nice, personality, approach, tend to let them in on a cold call a little bit more than a so that certainly sh there are certainly some differences there. Now, another business that I used to be in the pharmaceutical business, that was a little bit different. A lot of women are in the pharmaceutical business, and, so a little bit different there. Sometimes it worked against them because, maybe the doctor's wife was a receptionist, and they didn't like the fact that it was an attractive woman coming to see them. I had success in both those types of roles, and I think at the end of the day, if you provide value to your customer, it really doesn't matter if you're a woman, man, if you're a little bit older, younger. If you can go in and talk to your prospect or customer and they see you as a value added resource, you're going to succeed. Because if I've seen it too often where, I'll be on the road with a rep, doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man, and then I'll say, "Okay, what's the strategy for today's call?" And they'll say, "Oh, we're just, going in and checking in to say hi and see how things are going." And that's not really a good strategy. You wanna make sure that you're providing value because the competition is calling on those customers, and they're aggressive. They're offering discounts and promotions, and if your customer doesn't see you as someone who can come in and provide value, whether it's industry insights or education on product or any other type of solution, then, they may decide to go elsewhere. So it's very, very important whether it doesn't really matter where you are at your sales, make sure you go out and you provide value to your customers and your prospects.
It's interesting. You mentioned something about providing insights and past experience. Once a RFP has been won to a larger establishment, the salespeople would be upselling. I guess would be the best way to say it because here's a list of products you want to typically buy. You won the RFP, but they would come in and they would do what you just said. Here's a new product. Here's how to use the product if you're running into issues. But if you're flipping it over and you're going, let's say it's not an RFP and an open purchase environment, whether it's a small medium business as opposed to an enterprise. How do you find the clients that are going to be potentially client? I mean, a restaurant, your food, yeah, you can figure out, right? If someone's opening up a restaurant, or or supplies, kitchen supplies, etc. If I'm running a store and it's cleaning products or it's lighting products or it's telco, or I need an alarm system. Did you know you need an alarm system? Because people are gonna, yeah, and go on goes the story. How do you know to find those people? How do you? Is it all cold calling? Is it networking? What drives that boat?
Well, the beauty of cold calling now is you have a lot more information at your disposal versus when I was doing it 20, 25 years ago. Like when I when I was doing it, I was blind. I had no idea who the person was that I was knocking on, which door I was knocking on, what their title was, what their role was. Now you can go on LinkedIn and find out who the procurement person is. Then you get to the reception and say, "Hey, my name is Darren from ABC Company. I'd love to speak with Bernie today." So the information that you have just in your on your phone is so valuable. So there's a lot more information out there that you have, but also from a cold outreach perspective, it's got to be multi-channel. It's not just going out and physically knocking on doors or calling people on the phone. There's social media. There's different types of outreach on LinkedIn. There's something that I think I probably should have done more of, and that's networking, going to different networking events when I was younger. I didn't do much of that. Nowadays, I think I'm seeing a lot more account executives, different in-person networking events, online coffee chats, virtual coffees, making sure that you're meeting different referral partners out there. So if you're selling real estate, for example, you should have a referral partner that's an accountant, an insurance person, a lawyer, anybody, basically people who are playing in that same sandbox, right? Uh, Being members of different associations like the Chamber of Commerce, BNI, different peer groups, I think is really key. So finding those customers, I think, takes a multi-channel type of approach now versus the way we used to do things 25 years ago.
Darren, you get a referred lead and you walk in and meet the people.
Mhm.
What's the first two questions you're trying to diagnose even before you're in the deep end?
The first question I always asked was, "Why am I here? What brings me here today?" And that basically leads the conversation and the discussion. And based on their answers, I can then figure out what their pain points are, and figure out if I have a solution for them. Uh, Sometimes you don't have the solution, right? Sometimes it's not a good qualified lead. It could be something that is out of your space. So yeah, that's the first question I always ask: What brings me here? Why am I here? And then follow that up with a really good discussion. Find out their pain points, and then based on their pain points, you can develop a solution that can help them with their problems.
Aside from going out the door or networking, which is good because people get to know you and you get to know them. You understand the wants and needs. Is there a tool or series of tools in behind that can tell you cast your net over there? That's a uber rich environment. For example, if you're out here in the Canada area and probably some areas in Manitic, all of a sudden you see a whole bunch of new houses going up, builders putting it up. And if you're supplying the builder with stuff, you might want to, knock on the door saying, "Hi, I've got X." Or once people move in, I've got an alarm system.
Yeah.
Howdy. How do you help refine where you cast the net for the most target-rich environment for the salesperson? I know that sounds really not a pretty way to say it, but how do you find your best fit for your customer and the customer finds you because you know what they're going to have for a problem?
hmm Well, that I think requires the heavy lifting when you're developing your sales playbook. So the mistake that a lot of businesses make is that they cast that net very wide. They've got a spray and pray approach. In fact, I was at a networking event last night where I met a founder of a new startup and interesting product. And I asked okay, so what is your ICP? What's your ideal customer profile? And they couldn't really articulate it. They had a really hard time answering that question. And I think that's really the first thing any business has to do. Like, you have to figure out what your ICP is, and you may have multiple ICPs, but figure out what your main ideal client profile is, what the buyer persona is, what your value proposition is. So that's part of our sales playbook. Our sales playbook is divided into three different segments. So you have sales strategy, sales methodology, and sales process. And sales strategy, that's where you map out your ICP and your value prop, what differentiates you from the competition, buyer personas, like I mentioned before. And that will enable you to figure out where those customers are from a cold outreach perspective, marketing, and that sort of thing. But like I mentioned before, the mistake is, okay, this is what I sell. I'm going to go try to sell to everyone, and that doesn't work. You really need to narrow it down and figure out who's the best kind of market that you can promote to, and then go that way. And then once you have that, then you build off of that, right? Your sales playbook, I look at it as an ongoing working document. So your ICP could change. You can decide to venture in a different market. A new competitor can venture into the new market, so you'll have to make some revisions to the playbook. The worst thing is to have a playbook and it sits on a desk somewhere collecting dust. You want to make sure that it's always evolving. People are always referring back to it. And then when you start making your first new hires from the sales team during their onboarding, they can refer to the playbook. They hit the ground running. The onboarding process takes a little bit less time when you have a playbook, and you can get some really, really good wins when you have all that information in one spot.
Once I worked in a couple of different size firms, and once I find they have both a sales department and a marketing department, it's great because they're natural enemies. The
Mhm.
marketing department believes the salesmen are all a bunch of lazy dogs, and the marketing and the salesman believe the marketers couldn't design a doodle on a bathroom wall. What's your
Mm.
take on integrating marketing and selling?
It's so crucial to have that. If you have a siloed approach, it's not gonna work. Sales and marketing have to work together to to develop that go-to-market strategy and get to your end goal. Like I mentioned with the playbook, when I put together sales playbooks and I start talking about ICP and value proposition and what your story is, I work with marketing. If they have a marketing person or if they have a fractional marketing person, I'll work with them to develop that because marketing is part of sales and sales is part of marketing. And I'll give you an example of a client that I worked with, which which falls right into this conversation. This a business owner of a security company was looking to get more leads into the business. Sales were a little flat, so he wanted to get more leads. So he hired a marketing agency, and they came in and updated the website, did Google Ads, SEO, did all that sort of thing. And then after a little while, the owner became very, very frustrated because those leads weren't converting into sales. And very frustrated, was blaming marketing. You're not doing your job. And then I got connected with him, and within probably 10 to 15 minutes of my first discovery call, I can see exactly what was going on. They didn't have a sales process. They didn't have a sales playbook. What happened was whenever the company received a lead, whether it be by website, phone, everything was funneled through the receptionist, and the receptionist would assign leads to different sales reps with no rhyme or reason. And then once the sales rep received the lead, there was no process in terms of follow up. They didn't have a CRM. So all these leads were falling into this black hole. So what I did was I went in and I said, look, it's not marketing's fault. Marketing has done their job. They're getting you leads. You're not set up to properly have them convert from a lead to a sale. So we put in a CRM for them. We put in a sales infrastructure, which included the playbook and the process that I've been talking about, and working with that marketing agent. So I work with them to develop the ICP and the value proposition. everyone working together so that everyone knows exactly what the end result should be. And then after just a few months, their win rates went up, their average deal size went up, sales grew, by about 15 to, between 15 and 18% in the first few months. And the owner was extremely satisfied. So just a very quick example and something that I see all the time where sales and marketing are not being, they're not working together, and it can cause some unfortunate and poor results.
When people are engaged in sales, sometimes it's like, "Hi, here, buy my pony." "Oh, okay," and you buy the pony, or whatever the case might be. Is it one and done? You just turn on a light switch, or is it some sales you got to map out? Okay, we're interested. Now you need to build up the specs, or garner more information. Do you want it? You want extended warranty? You can get that in the car dealerships a lot. But
Right.
I've been in a circumstance where we're getting a piece of hardware, and it was going out to RFP, and the guy says, "Listen, it was worth about 120,000, some on the plant," and he says, "For another 5K or 10K, we'll add on extended warranty." And then basically what was happening is they'd beef up the parts so it would
Hmm.
have a longer lifespan, right? So it wouldn't
Right.
fail. So the guy was honest about what was going on, as opposed to here's another 5K. You can pay us, and we'll come out and service it, or we'll just make sure it's beefier and lasts
Mhm.
longer. So that whole approach, if you're dealing with an RFP, is that something that it's one? Obviously, in an RFP process, it's never one and done. You have to answer the RFP. But 2, when you have something that is, "I wanna buy the product, I'm doing comparison," how do you handle that process? How do you track it from the business side? And then how do you handle it as a salesperson?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're selling and the length of the sales cycle. And also when talking about, warranties and that sort of thing, that's typically embedded in a lot of compensation plans. So that's one area that I find compensation plans are often misaligned with businesses. They don't match the financial objectives of the company, and very often they don't incentivize the right behaviors. So if you're looking at a situation where you're getting oversold or extended warranties and that sort of thing, like I look back at some of my comp plans, that's basically how it worked. Like I would get a, more of a bonus if I sold an extended warranty for an alarm system and guard service, and so sales reps will sell to their compensation plan all the time. So as a business, you need to make sure that the comp plan matches your financial objectives and the overall objectives of the organization. Um, and in terms of following that process, it's key to have that sales process embedded in somewhere, whether it's in your playbook or your CRM. So you've got your lead, whether it's a cold lead or a lead that's inbound. You qualify that lead, you do a discovery call, presentation, demo, and then you put in the proposal. And then, you won the proposal or not. There may be some negotiation involved. And then the key here is follow up, right? That's where a lot of sales are missed, is that there's just no follow up because there's no system that they have to remind and tag that type of lead for follow up. So that is just so important. So very, very important for any organization to have some sort of system. CRM is probably the best one, just to make sure that the sales process is embedded in there, and that way the reps can follow that process along, especially on those longer sales cycles. I have a client who's in cybersecurity, and their sales cycle is about 12 to 14 months, which is quite long because there's a lot of education at the front end. If you're selling widgets and your sales process is 3 months, then it's a little bit different, right? But it really depends on the industry, how long your sales cycle is, and making sure that you have that technology within the business so that you can keep track of everything.
Is consumables, it's one thing to buy, I'll use the, "I buy my pony." Now, if I'm also selling you the hay or the barn to stable the animal, that's, a kind of an upsell. Is that also kind of the complete package? Is that the art of upselling, or is it just, hi, here's the pony, and you're off to the races? I know it can be client driven, but if the client buys a pony and they live in suburbia, might not fit so well.
Right. I call it CPR, conversion, penetration, retention. So what I mean by that is you want to make sure that you have a high conversion rate on new business, but that existing customer base that you have is an absolute gold mine. So penetration is so important. You want to make sure that you can penetrate your existing accounts to upsell, cross sell, which brings me back to what I said before, making sure that you're providing value every single time that you're visiting them. Penetrating that customer will lead to a stickier customer. Uh, I worked for a company before where the vast majority of their of their accounts, probably about 70%, was $2,000 and less. That is a high churn rate. Okay, when you have customers only paying you $2,000 a year, so you want to make sure that you have a customer base that's paying more and seeing that value, and it means it's a stickier customer. So having the conversion, penetration, retention kind of model, I think every business should be looking at that. So sure, maybe you have a key product that most people buy, but then you need to take a look at some of the other options that are available if needed. So making sure that you have a stickier customer, they're paying you a little bit more per year, per month, and providing that value, making sure that you're continually communicating with your customers. That's another thing that a lot of businesses make the mistake. They sell to their customer, but you don't hear from uh, your your customer or the person that you bought it from. I think it's very important that you continue to communicate, whether through sales reps, newsletters, communication, and providing that value. Because if you don't, like I mentioned before, the competition is out there calling on those customers.
Darren, you've been around this block a while, and you talked about 100% commission, and then there's people, everything is a salary and it levels out, and then there's hybrid, which is some kind of a mix of both. Do you have
Right.
strong opinions about what model works best in your mind?
Yeah, and the first thing that you need to look at if you're a business owner looking at making a hire with your compensation plan is what type of business you're in. If it's B2C and it's highly transactional, then a 100% commission plan can work. There's no question, but it does come with some drawback. First and foremost, it's high turnover, very difficult to find top talent at 100% commission. Recruiters that I speak with, they all tell me that it takes time, so you have to be patient. And some recruiters may not even take on that type of engagement because it's very difficult to find. So if you're B2C transactional, it can work. However, if you're B2B and your sales process is a little bit more consultative, I would highly recommend against a 100% only commission plan. You're just asking for for more problems than you want. So you want to have a good mix of a base salary versus a commission plus bonus. That's probably the type of compensation plan that I see most often is a 50% base and 50% commission bonus type of structure. That provides sales reps with some stability. Want to make sure that you have a comp plan that incentivizes the right behaviors. So, for example, if your business model you want to have a higher percentage of new business, you want to make sure that your reps are paid on a higher tier for new business. And I've seen compensation plans work the opposite way. So I've seen a business say, "Hey, we want our reps to go out and get new business," but they're not comped on. So, and then they wonder why things aren't working. So you want to make sure that the compensation plan incentivizes the right behaviors that you're looking for, whether it's new business, whether you want them to concentrate on existing accounts, retention. Those are all different things that you can put into a compensation plan. 50/50 is probably the one that I see most often and works best in a B2B type of scenario. And for a longer sales cycle, so for example, the cybersecurity company that I was mentioning before of 12 to 14 months, then your base salary is going to be higher, right? It's going to be higher on the front end because it takes a lot longer for that rep to make a sale.
Do you find training sales owners, presidents, to actually let their people do the selling? There's an old thing I used to, why would you have a dog and bark too? Do you find that getting delegating and training is something a lot of salespeople are afraid of? I mean, not
I think
salespeople, but owners.
absolutely because the owners and founders that I meet, they all have different backgrounds. Could be engineering, tech, and they've made some sales, but sales is not something that they're naturally, uh, they don't, it doesn't come naturally to them. So the owners that I meet, they either don't have the time or the desire to do so, or the skill set to provide that coaching and training, and as a result, the sales reps are kind of left to their own devices, and they're forced to figure things out on their own. They develop the poor habits, and that of course leads to higher turnover because sales reps, they're in the field most of the time on their own, and they crave feedback. They want feedback. They want to know whether they're doing a good job or not. And if you're an owner who's leading a sales team, you need to be out there providing that coaching and guidance. And if you can't, then you do have some options. You can hire a full-time sales manager or director. You might want to get a sales trainer in, a fractional sales leader like myself, but you need to get somebody to come in and provide that coaching and guidance for your team because if you're not providing that, then raw talent can only go so far.
So, Darren, tell us a bit about sales acceleration. What's the scoop between you and sales acceleration?
I spent over 25 years in the corporate world and learned a lot. And after many, many years of business travel, and I decided that I was going to venture out on my own. I still wanted to coach and I still wanted to work with business owners and help them out, but I really didn't know, what type of services I should be providing, and I really didn't have any idea of pricing and contracts and marketing. So I was introduced to sales acceleration, and it's a licensing agreement that I have with them. They provide me with all the resources and tools that I need to help me help my client. So I use sales acceleration for all my templates, and we also have very good affinity and productivity partners like HubSpot and Pipedrive for CRM, and then we've got some really cool AI partners. And the other thing that's really, really nice is that I can also lean on fellow advisors within the network. So if I'm at overcapacity or if a client says, look, Darren, I absolutely need somebody who has experience in construction, and if I might not have it, I can refer that to another advisor that I know. So it's a really good network. Even though this is my own business, I have a tremendous amount of support with sales acceleration. And it's led me to kind of hit the ground running. I didn't have to spend months putting together a website and putting together marketing and my offerings. So it's been a really, really good partnership, and I absolutely love what I do. I wish I started this sooner.
Darren, you're in Mantico
I
and
am.
we're meeting on Zoom. So in some ways that's global. Do you find your geography is happiest in Eastern Ontario? Do you work the world? Where do your clients find you and how?
I have clients all over across Canada and into the US. It's funny, when I first started, I thought it would be primarily Ottawa, Eastern Ontario. It's a smaller world. It's a virtual world, as you said, Wayne. And yeah, I have clients all over the place, and people can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Darren Legault. There's not too many of us out there. Uh, Sales Acceleration. Legault at salesacceleration.com, and acceleration is spelled a little bit differently. It's XCELERATION, and my number is 613-858-1838. And send me a note if you're a business owner who is struggling with stagnant sales. I'd love to connect, see how I can help you. And I really appreciate you guys having me on today.
Darren Legault, I want to say thank you so much for giving us great insight to understanding the sales, we've only scratched the surface because there's a lot more. As you're
Mhm.
describing, I'm going, hang on, I could ask these 10 other questions. So thank you for sharing with us. Wayne, oh, as always, being a co-host, good to have you here. And you, the Knack for Business listeners, appreciate you also being here too. So sales are stuck, running slow. You've been running at it for a while or just starting out. Reach out to Darren. He can help get you spun up and in the right direction, getting your playbook ready for your sales and have your team aimed the right direction.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.